Look at the amount of disrespect this would be to William. Meghan does not care about her connection to this family. If you are in close proximity, she is going to steal it.
As she puts her latest was never wardrobe onto her new website, Radar Online is reporting her latest fashion plot involves Princess Diana. Woman needs cash. Desperately needs cash. And even though there was all the criticism about Geneva, she knew that if she put up these was never outfits, that would be the way to start getting some money coming in.
There is a story circulating in the most closely watched royal commentary circles that has divided opinion more sharply than almost anything in recent months. The story goes like this. King Charles, aware that his cancer diagnosis has given his reign an urgency and a fragility that nobody in the palace anticipated, is working quietly behind the scenes to bring Prince Harry back into the royal fold. A new deputy private secretary named Theo Rich has been appointed, and sources suggest his brief includes, among other things, rebuilding the broken bridge between the king and his younger son. The reconciliation plot, as it has been called, is real. It is active.
Is going to become the latest money-making scheme for her. I mean, this is obvious, isn't it? Because she can't do it herself. So that's why she's trying Lily, for example, in the cupboard. That's why this week she launched the candle on the back of the royal wedding.
And it is being driven by a king who wants his legacy to be defined by unity rather than division. That is one version of the story. Here is the other. The reconciliation plot will fail. Not because Charles does not want it to succeed. Not because Harry is unwilling to consider a path back. But because of one person who sits at the very center of the British royal family and who sees Harry and Meghan with a clarity that neither sentimentality nor illness can obscure. Queen Camilla. And when Camilla speaks, Charles listens. Welcome back. Today we are going deep on the most consequential behind-the-scenes royal story of the moment, whether the palace reconciliation effort is real, why the people who know this family best believe it is destined to fail, and what is actually happening with the Peter Phillips wedding, the Beatrice and Eugenie situation, and the quiet but significant rise of a young royal who is showing the entire Windsor family exactly how this should be done. Let us start with Charles and Camilla. Because to understand why the reconciliation plot faces the obstacles it faces, you need to understand something about how this marriage actually works. Camilla was not always accepted. The British public's initial resistance to her was fierce and sustained, rooted in the pain of Diana's memory and the perception that she had played a destructive role in one of the great royal love stories of the 20th century.
What she did with the naming of her daughter, And it's so weird because I heard something about the late queen and they said her childhood name Lilibet. And I immediately thought of Meghan's daughter. And that's what Meghan is doing. And
But over the years, through patience and consistency and a genuine refusal to push herself into spaces that were not hers to occupy, Camilla earned something that no press campaign could have manufactured. Respect. Trust. And ultimately, a role within the royal family that is more significant than her formal title suggests. People who have studied this relationship closely describe Camilla's influence on Charles not as control, but as clarity. She does not tell him what to do. She does not issue instructions or ultimatums. What she does is something considerably more subtle and considerably more powerful. She thinks things through with him. She analyzes situations from angles he might not naturally consider. She provides the kind of honest, loving, unvarnished counsel that very few people in his position ever receive, because most people around a king tell him what he wants to hear, not what he needs to know. Camilla tells him what he needs to know. And he trusts her completely. Over decades of partnership, he has learned that when Camilla has a clear and settled view about something, she is usually right. Her view on Harry and Meghan is clear and settled. She watched what happened. She watched the Oprah interview and the Netflix documentary and the memoir. She watched the systematic dismantling of the institution that Charles has devoted his entire life to building and serving. She watched a son who was given every possible opportunity to return to the fold choose, repeatedly and publicly, to cause maximum damage instead. And she has reached a conclusion that she has communicated to Charles with the same quiet firmness she brings to everything. Meghan Markle cannot come back into this family. The damage is too deep, the trust too completely broken, the pattern too consistent and too deliberate to pretend that a meeting with a deputy private secretary can resolve what years of calculated destruction have created. And then there is William. Because even if Charles were inclined to push harder for reconciliation, the center of gravity in the British royal family is shifting. Charles is a king managing his health alongside his duties. The future is William. And William's position on Harry and Meghan is not complicated by the kind of paternal love that makes Charles's calculations harder. William's position is simple, settled, and immovable. What was said about Catherine, about a woman who left an ordinary life to take on one of the most demanding and scrutinized roles on earth, who has worked with extraordinary dedication and grace, who has raised 3 children in the public eye while navigating the relentless pressure of royal life, who faced a cancer diagnosis with a dignity that moved an entire nation. What was said about her by Harry and enabled by Meghan is something that William will not forgive. Not this year. Possibly not in this lifetime. Harry once described Catherine as the sister he never had. He used those words. He meant them, at least in the moment he said them. And then he allowed those words to be followed by months and years of insinuation, of planted stories, of a broader narrative that positioned Catherine as cold and unwelcoming toward Meghan, a narrative that caused real harm to a real person who had done nothing to deserve it. William knows exactly how much work Catherine put in. He watched it. He watched her navigate the transition from ordinary girl to future queen with a care and a conscientiousness that left almost everyone who worked with her in awe. And he watched her be painted, in the Sussex narrative, as a villain. That is not something a husband forgets. And William is not just a husband. He is the future king. His institutional memory is already functioning. The legal situation adds another layer of complexity that the reconciliation narrative tends to skip over. Harry's ongoing lawsuit against Associated Newspapers is not yet resolved. And while that case remains active and unresolved, there is a specific and serious problem with any meaningful communication between Charles and his son. Harry has demonstrated, on more than one occasion, that private conversations with his father do not necessarily stay private. The BBC interview years ago. The carefully managed leaks that have shaped multiple news cycles. Charles knows this. His advisors know this. And in the context of an active legal proceeding, any conversation between a king and his son that touches on matters before the courts, even tangentially, even innocently, carries risks that the palace simply cannot accept. The king cannot speak freely to Harry. Harry cannot be trusted to hold private what needs to remain private. Until the legal situation resolves, the bridge stays up. Now let us talk about the Peter Phillips wedding. Because what is happening around the June 6th celebration at All Saints Church in Kempsford is telling a story about where power actually sits within the extended royal family, and it is not the story the Sussex camp would prefer people to tell. Harry and Meghan were not invited. This is not a diplomatic absence or a scheduling conflict. Peter Phillips made a deliberate choice. And the reasons for that choice run deeper than the general Sussex rift. There is a specific piece of history here that illuminates the decision with painful clarity. At Princess Eugenie's wedding in 2018, a celebration that Eugenie had anticipated with enormous excitement, a day that should have been entirely and gloriously hers, Meghan announced her pregnancy. In the middle of someone else's wedding. Dominating the coverage. Redirecting the narrative. Stealing the day in the most complete way possible. Eugenie, by all accounts an exceptionally warm and generous person, was devastated. The people around her were furious. And that moment, that particular act of what can only be described as spectacular social selfishness, has not been forgotten by anyone in the extended royal family who witnessed its impact. Peter Phillips does not want his wedding to become a Sussex story. He does not want the coverage of his second marriage, his genuine happiness, his family celebration, to be filtered through the lens of whatever drama the Sussex operation generates on any given day. He does not want the photographer's angle toward Meghan rather than his bride. He does not want the headlines the next morning to include the words Harry and Meghan anywhere near them. It is that simple. And that clear. And that completely understandable. The Beatrice and Eugenie situation is more complicated and more sympathetic. Both princesses were invited. Both accepted. And now, in light of the expanding police investigation into their father Prince Andrew, which has broadened to include an alleged incident at Royal Ascot in 2002, both appear to be leaning toward not attending, specifically because they do not want the attention their presence would generate to overshadow the celebration. This is a meaningful distinction. Beatrice and Eugenie were wanted at this wedding. They were invited. They made the choice themselves, out of consideration for Peter and Harriet, to step back. That is a fundamentally different situation from Harry and Meghan, who were not invited at all and who were never seriously considered for the guest list. And then there is Zara. And Mike Tyndall. Because the extended royal family's collective statement of solidarity with William and Catherine has not just been made through absence and exclusion. It has been made explicitly and on the record. Mike Tyndall, Zara's husband and someone who has never been afraid to speak plainly, made a public declaration of support for William and Catherine that left no room for interpretation. We back William and Catherine. We are united. Full stop. In the quiet diplomacy of the royal family, that kind of explicit public statement is remarkable. It represents a closing of ranks that extends well beyond the senior working royals. It reaches into the younger generation, into the cousins and in-laws and extended connections that make up the broader Windsor world. Harry is not just estranged from his brother. He is estranged from a family that has decided, collectively and deliberately, which side of this divide it stands on. There is one more dimension to the reconciliation question that the coverage has not always addressed directly. The threat of a Meghan memoir. Sources suggest Meghan has been making it quietly known that she has kept a diary, detailed, personal, covering her years within and beyond the royal family, and that its eventual publication remains a possibility. The royal family's response to this reported threat has been, characteristically, silence. But those who know the institution well suggest that the silence is not fear. It is calculation. Meghan has now told so many contradictory stories, made so many claims that have been disputed and in some cases demonstrably disproven, that the credibility required to make a new memoir land with maximum impact has been significantly eroded. A woman who said she had 7 years of agony inside the royal family and is now, 8 years after leaving, seeking to return to that same family, on her own terms, naturally, is not a narrator whose new revelations the public will receive with the trust and the sympathy that made the Oprah interview so powerful in its moment. The moment has passed. The audience has adjusted its priors. And a memoir released now, into a media landscape that has grown considerably more skeptical of the Sussex narrative, would not necessarily achieve what the threat of it is designed to achieve. Now let us turn to something that provides genuine cause for optimism about the next generation of royal life. Lady Louise Windsor, the daughter of the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, Sophie and Edward, is quietly becoming one of the most admired young members of the extended royal family. She has just completed her university examinations. She is in a long-term relationship with a young man she met at university. She has been working part-time on the operations team at the Royal Windsor Horse Show, a practical, unglamorous, genuinely useful role that has earned her a reputation among those who work alongside her as hardworking, calm, and a real asset. Lady Louise does not have a royal title. That was a deliberate choice made by her parents, following the model established by Princess Anne with Peter Phillips and Zara, the belief that children of the royal family are better served by being given the space to build their own lives rather than being permanently defined by their proximity to the crown. And in Louise's case, the absence of a title has produced exactly the kind of well-rounded, grounded young person that the institution needs more of. She attended the late Queen Elizabeth's church services more regularly than almost any other young royal. She sat with her grandmother and talked when others were busy with their public roles. She was, by all accounts, genuinely kind to an elderly woman who happened also to be the Queen. You cannot manufacture that. You cannot strategize it. It is simply who she is. The contrast with the Sussex approach to royal life requires no elaboration. One young woman, without a title, working on the operations team at a horse show, earning genuine affection through genuine service. And half a world away, a duchess with every platform and every resource and every opportunity that the modern media landscape can provide, still searching for the formula that will make the public love her the way she believes she deserves to be loved. The formula, for those watching Louise, does not appear to be complicated. Show up. Do the work. Do not make yourself the story. Be kind to the people around you regardless of their rank or their usefulness to your brand. Trust that genuine service, performed consistently over time, builds something that no amount of strategic positioning can replicate. It is a lesson that the Sussex operation, for all its sophistication and all its resources, has not yet learned. And the question that hangs over everything, over the reconciliation plot and the Peter Phillips wedding and the Beatrice and Eugenie situation and the quiet rise of Lady Louise, is whether it ever will. Camilla, watching all of it from the steady center of the family she has spent decades helping to strengthen, appears to have her answer. And if history is any guide, her answer is probably right. If this video gave you something to think about, please hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who care about the real story behind the royal headlines. Subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss our next video. Thank you so much for watching.